What's going on, guys? My name is Christopher and welcome to It's Complicated, the show where I talk about and showcase wristwatches. So if you love watches like I do, you're going to want to hit that subscribe button, then click on the bell, and you'll be all set. Today, I'm going to be showcasing an Invicta Pro Diver. That's right, you heard me right. I'm going to be showcasing an Invicta Pro Diver, and we're going to be discussing a little bit about Invicta and their fans. Here we go. Now, for those of you who don't know, which I don't think is many of you, but I made a video called Why People Hate Invicta Watches. Now, the video is a very controversial video. It has about equal thumbs down to thumbs up. It's got a lot of negative comments, a lot of silly stuff on there. Cracks me up. Some crazy Invicta fanboy even made a video about my video, and so did some huge bodybuilder. Crazy. Now, I don't own any Invicta watches, but my friend Jeff does, and he asked if I would be interested in borrowing his Invicta Pro Diver to make a video about and maybe discussing a little bit about Invicta itself. So I told Jeff, why not? Now let's check it out. So here it is, the Invicta Pro Diver 8926. The MSRP on this watch is $495, but you can find it for under 80 bucks if you shop around. So let's run down the specs of this watch quickly because I have a lot to say. And keep in mind, this is a mid-tier Invicta Pro Diver. They do make one with a quartz movement that you can get for under 50 bucks, and they also make one with a Swiss movement in it as well. That's an ETA movement, I believe, which sells for about $300. Now, getting back to the watch, it has a 40 millimeter case, has an aluminum bezel insert. It does have hollow end links. Here's a picture of the bracelet off the watch so you can see that hollow end link. The watch is using a Seiko NH35A, which is an automatic hand-winding movement that can be hacked and has a date feature as well. Now the timekeeping, not great. It was plus 6.2 seconds the first day, negative 2.1 seconds the next day, and then the last day I checked it, it was plus 10.7 seconds. Not very consistent at all. Now, I know this watch is using a Seiko movement, but it seems like they're buying Seiko movements that didn't quite pass quality control or just weren't regulated correctly. Now, this watch does have a mineral crystal, which Invicta calls a flame fusion crystal. And it's a pretty scratch-resistant crystal, but it can be easily scratched compared to an actual sapphire crystal. The dial is black with a raised Invicta logo at 12 o'clock, and the hour markers are raised as well. Now, the steel around the hour markers looks a little cheap. I've heard it referred to as nipply, and a lot of the very cheap Rolex Submariner fakes kind of look like that as well. But, you know, nothing horrible for the price point. The second hand is thin with a lume dot on it really close to the edge of the dial and an Invicta symbol on the opposite side. The minute hand's pretty standard, and the hour hand has that Mercedes symbol on it, very similar to the Rolex Submariner. This watch is 660 feet or 200 meters water resistant. It does have a 120 click unidirectional rotating bezel. Now this is a scalloped one. They used to be coined just like the Submariner, but the scalloped one, it just doesn't have the grip. And this is very tough to turn compared to a luxury watch. But hey, it does turn. Another thing I don't like about this is you just can't line this up right. So it does wiggle, but it doesn't like settle when it wiggles. So here is the best I can put it, which is here. Now you can see it's a little to the right of the hour marker. You can play with it, but it kind of just goes back to right. And if I go to the left one click, then it's better, but it's still to the left of 12 o'clock. Doesn't quite stay right how it's supposed to be, but I'm sure that's something. Maybe that's better. That's better looking, and that's about as good as I've been able to do it. The back of the case does have a display back. There's really not much to show here. It's just a Seiko movement. Nothing is really decorated except for the rotor. It's just bright yellow, and it has the Invicta branding on it. But it is cool to see the inside of a mechanical watch if you've never seen one. Oh yeah, and there's also a giant Invicta engraving on this side of the case here, just in case you forgot what kind of watch it is, between the logo on the second hand and the logo on the dial. Now this watch has a solid steel bracelet with polished center links and solid center links as well. Now, when it comes to sizing this bracelet, it's just push pins to size it, no actual screws or anything that you would find in a nicer watch. And every single link has Invicta written on the back of it, just to keep reminding you it's an Invicta. And the watch does have a pretty sturdy clasp here, and of course on the clasp is another Invicta logo, just in case you forgot what brand of watch this is. But you know something? Just like I said in another video, for 80 bucks, it's not bad. It's a great watch for a teenager or someone just getting into mechanical watches. It's the perfect beater watch. It's not something to show off, but if you wear it to deliver your newspapers and you can time your route or whatever, perfect. That's what it's made for. And while you're delivering those papers, you'll look like you have a Rolex Submariner on. Just like this kid who left me a comment on my video. He said, I like Invicta just because they fake Rolex watches and sell them for a cheap price. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's a very cheap homage to a Rolex Submariner. But you know what aggravates me about Invicta fanboys, especially grown-up 30-plus-year-old Invicta fanboys, is they rep these watches so hard, and most of the time, but not all the time, most of the time, they hate on Rolex, which seems silly if you're rocking a watch that's trying to look like a Rolex. It seems weird to me to be wearing any budget type watch and to hate on a luxury brand, whether it's Rolex, Patek, Omega, even Oris. Why hate on a brand just because you can't afford it or you don't think it's worth the money? I mean, I personally can't afford a Patek Philippe, and you don't hear me trashing the brand. Matter of fact, I did a video showcasing a Patek Philippe, and I think it's a fantastic watch. Another thing many Invicta lovers or Invicta fanboys claim is that Invictas are just as, or maybe close to, as nice as something like a Rolex. Totally delusional. Then, these same Invicta lovers also say that Invictas are better than Seikos. Meanwhile, many Invicta watches are using Seiko movements. So how does that make sense? How do you say Invictas are better than a company they are buying parts from? I mean, if you like the case design of an Invicta better than a Seiko, that's fine and dandy, but recognize that that wouldn't exist without Seiko. Same goes for the Swiss Pro Diver. It's got a Swiss movement in it from the Swatch Group. At the end of the day, I think Invicta is a great brand for teenagers and young adults. Invicta knows this and they market towards those kids, making watches with DC comic characters like Superman and Aquaman, Marvel comic characters like Captain America and Iron Man, and Disney characters like Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. So if you're watching this video and you have a couple Invictas laying around, knock your socks off, enjoy them. Just don't sit there and tell me that this watch is as nice as this watch. And there you have it, guys. That is the Invicta Pro Diver and some of my thoughts on the Pro Diver. Now, like I mentioned before, I think for the price point, if you're looking for your first mechanical watch for 80 bucks, fine, grab the Pro Diver. I think it's better than getting a fake Rolex Submariner, but don't grab an $80 watch and then tell somebody that it was a $500 watch or it is some kind of luxury item like an Oris, Omega, Rolex, etc. You know, and if you fall in love with the hobby and you really like horology and you love mechanical watches, maybe one day the Invicta wearer will buy a Rolex Submariner, and then he can have both and say, you know, I bought this is what got me into the hobby, and now I have the real version. I have the Rolex Submariner, and this was a nice little cool watch, but it's no Rolex Submariner. And I think that's really my point, guys. Invicta is a fine brand for the price point, but it is not a high-end horology brand. It's just not. There's no debating that fact. And that wraps up another episode of It's Complicated. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, like this video, share it with all your friends, and I'll see you next time on another episode of It's Complicated.